Hola, hola, everybody. It's Dr. J Flow. I wanted to let you know that we are doing an audience survey because we want to learn more about you, who you are, what you like, and what you would like to see in future episodes. So I ask you to please help us make this podcast better by answering a short survey. You can find the link in the show notes, and it will take less than 5 minutes, I promise. As a token of appreciation, you'll have the opportunity to enter into a raffle for a $20 gift card. That's it. Here's the episode.
Remain confident and remember you are capable. You are an engineer. And I honestly still tell myself that every day. Building that confidence is a work in progress and you have to work at it every day.
Welcome to Latinx Can, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, La Doctora Jenire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Marissa Garcia, a native of El Paso who took advantage of the opportunities offered at UTEP, a Hispanic serving institution, to become a NASA engineer. And she is here to tell you, sí se puede, my friends, sí se puede. Marissa Garcia, welcome to Latinx Can.
Hi, happy to be here virtually.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's still very intense pandemic season, but I'm happy that at least we can connect online. And I'm excited to talk about your experience growing up. And, you know, it's not every day that you get a NASA scientist on or access to one. So I'm very excited about that.
I'm excited as well.
Okay, so let's start by talking a little bit about yourself, your story. Tell me a little bit about where your story begins.
A little bit about my story is that I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. And when I say born and raised, I really do mean raised. I was there for elementary school, middle school, high school, my bachelor's and master's.
Yeah.
So I've lived there the majority of my life up until recently when I've moved to Alabama. I'm third generation Mexican-American on my mom's side. My grandparents or my mom's parents are the ones that immigrated over and became naturalized citizens. And my dad's side has been here a little bit longer.
I was just curious what it was like growing up in El Paso for you.
For me, growing up in El Paso, well, it's a Chihuahuan desert, so I'm a desert girl, and they have beautiful mountains. So if that sounds like your kind of place, that's what El Paso is. And El Paso is actually a border city with Juarez, Mexico. So we're sister cities, so that you can see that huge cultural influence there. But the crazy thing about El Paso is that it's kind of like a bubble compared to the rest of the United States, in that the majority is what's considered a minority. So the majority there is Hispanic or Latinx community.
Right.
So growing up, I never thought of myself as a minority. I just was living my best life.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't until that I left that El Paso bubble and went to my first internship in Maryland when I realized, like, hey, I actually am a minority. There's not too many people who look like me out here. By here, I mean like in the professional environment. You
mentioned El Paso is a unique city in the U.S. It is maybe a little over 80% Hispanic or Latinx. And I was wondering, you mentioned that you also went to UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso, and that is a Hispanic serving institution. And I recently learned that to be a Hispanic serving institution, the population of the university has to be at least 25% of Hispanic or Latinx descent. What is it like to study at a Hispanic serving institution?
So for me, going to UTEP, I actually didn't even know that it was a Hispanic serving institution originally, or I didn't know that terminology or
Yep.
that label. That's what I'm looking for. Label was a thing, like HBUs or Hispanic Serving Institutions. I had no idea. I just knew that UTEP was the university in my community, and they offered me a scholarship which covered most of my tuition.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh yeah, I want to save money on school in the long term and save money by staying at home. So, I decided to go to UTEP. So in terms of UTEP having well over that 25% Hispanic, Latinx population there, it just felt like an extension of El Paso. It was just surrounded by people that, again, look like me. So I feel like it was a great environment to thrive in. And
I think that's very important because you were mentioning a little earlier that you were born and raised in El Paso and that you never thought of yourself as being in the minority. And for me, it's very similar, but obviously because I was born and raised in Venezuela. So everybody who is around me sort of looks like me, behaves like me, thinks similarly to the way that I think. And I always saw myself represented in every single potential professional field that I could ever imagine to be. In fact, in my household, everybody was an engineer. My mom is an engineer. My dad is an engineer. My sister is an engineer. And so obviously what I was going to be was to be an engineer. So I was like, chemical engineering because I like chemistry. I didn't become an engineer. I'm a chemist. But what I'm trying to get to this is growing up and seeing yourself represented everywhere is so important because it gives you that ability to dream big, right? So I think about my opportunities and all the professional opportunities that I have got here in the States and in other areas of the world because I've also lived in other countries. But growing up in Venezuela, the biggest and most important opportunity that I ever got there was to see myself represented everywhere because I know that I can achieve anything, right?
Yes, definitely.
And so when you were pursuing your studies at UTEP, you did your bachelor's in mechanical engineering, followed by a master's degree in mechanical engineering as well. And one opportunity that made a difference in your career was working at UTEP's Center for Space Exploration and Technology Research. Tell me a little bit more about how you got involved with that program and what that program is all about.
So the way I got involved is one of the professors that does research within CSETR. He actually initially recruited me around the second semester of my sophomore year. But I didn't actually end up joining the research group until the first semester of my senior year, just because I missed the application deadline. So I had to wait. So
I know.
timing is everything. It happens for a reason. So yes, I joined in my senior year and continued the research through my master's. But the actual CSETR, well, that's the acronym we use. Space Exploration Technology Research is a mouthful.
Yeah.
So it is a NASA-funded center, and their focus is on aerospace and energy research. And all the employees or the students, really, both undergraduate and graduate students, get the opportunity to get really that hands-on experience, which I really like. I'm a hands-on person. I talk with my hands too. Develop our design skills, our analysis skills, and our testing skills. And there's also those opportunities to actually network with full-time NASA employees. Of course, then at the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
That mentorship, right?
Yeah.
So we got to talk with them at either biweekly or monthly meetings. And they also provided the potential for internships with them, of course, given how their programs were working at the time and where they were at with projects. For me personally, CSETR, it really helped me get my foot in the door in the aerospace industry, because otherwise I don't know how I would have gotten in.
How did you choose to be a mechanical engineering or engineer? What inspired you to do that? And did you think right out of the bat that you would do aerospace engineering or something like that?
Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought to do aerospace engineering, if I'm being completely honest. And the reason I chose mechanical engineering was because, similar to you, well, not my entire family, or my dad, he's an engineer. So he always pushed me towards engineering, and he saw that in me. But the reason why I chose mechanical engineering is because around the time when I was going to start college and deciding what I wanted to major in, that was around the time of the recession that happened in the United States, like in around 2012, I think was, or 2011. Mm-hmm. So at that time, the recession did affect my family in some aspect. Mm-hmm. So pursuing a degree that provided versatility was important to me. Mm-hmm. So on doing research of the different degrees, I saw that mechanical engineering in particular, I could go into many different avenues. There's were a lot of more opportunities, at least when I was reading the different profiles of what every engineering discipline was.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even because like I liked gears or something like that. Yeah. It was really just the versatility of the degree and what I could do with it.
Yeah. And I think that that's a very mature way of looking at things, right? You know, your family got affected by this, and you having this ability to say, okay, well, how can I sort of create a safer space for me to be able to pivot if I have to?
Yep, I'm very impressed with my 18-year-old self.
That's great. It speaks greatly of your parents, by the way. And so you then, you mentioned CSETR was the door that opened for you at NASA. And then not only do you have access to some of the employees, the full-time employees at NASA, but then you get this opportunity to pursue an internship at the Johnson Space Center as a propulsion engineer in the summer of 2017. And during this internship, you also learned about the Pathways program with NASA, which would eventually help you land a full-time position. What is the Pathways program all about? And, how was your experience as an intern at NASA?
So I guess to start, there are two types of interns at NASA. So the first one is the semester intern, which is what I did at JSC or Johnson Space Center, where you're only there for a semester, and it's a different actually application website as well for that, and it's based on the project needs that mentors put out. The Pathways program, or formerly known as co-op, again heard about that when I did my internship at Johnson.
Okay.
So before I talk about the Pathways program, I'll talk a bit about, I guess, the semester internship part.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So I did my JSC internship summer of 2017. And in that internship, they had me helping with designing a cooling system for an ignition system. Mm-hmm. I don't remember all the exact details just because it was a somewhat long time ago, like not too much. But that was the primary objective. It was using like LN2 or liquid nitrogen, like a copper tube, and using both conductive and convective heat transfer methods to cool the ignition system. I really enjoyed it, both the work, because it was challenging. It really pushed me to my limits there. Pushed me to my limits, but also helped me even extend my limits, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't want to put a limit on myself, reusing that word. But it also made me realize I really love the NASA environment and the NASA culture. Mm-hmm. So upon learning about the Pathways program while at my semester internship, like they had an informational session as well. I decided to apply for the program once it became open. Yeah. And what I mean by that is the Pathways program only has job openings every few semesters. Mm-hmm. So in my case, the next opening would have been, so I was at my internship summer 2017. the next opening was fall 2017. Yes.
Okay.
A little bit about that program is, before I can get into, I guess, the application part of it.
Yeah. And we're going to dive into the very nitty gritty details of the application. But I love how you are just providing these like distinctions between the two ways to intern at the agency.
Of course. Yep. I was confused about the two methods too. I didn't know about it. Like I said, didn't know about the Pathways program until I was there. So letting more people know about that program is great because we get more applicants, and that would have not otherwise heard about the program.
Right, of course.
So talking about the Pathways program, which is a program where you're actually a civil servant. You're hired as a civil servant, and you do a dual internship while also working towards your degree. So in my case, I got accepted when I still had at least a year before I graduated with my master's. And while working toward my master's, like a couple semesters I'd be at school, and the next semester I'd be, in my case, at Marshall Space Flight Center doing a rotation or an internship.
Okay.
For me, in my master's program, I ended up doing 3 rotations at Marshall.
And is this something that you have to talk to your professor about when you're doing your master's? I don't know if you were doing, I guess in chemistry, a master program is pretty much based on doing research. There's some classes, but the majority of it is doing research. I know that in engineering, for example, from my friends in petroleum engineering, some of them can do a master's that involves research, and some of them just do a master's that is mostly just taking classes. Is that similar to your experience, or what was your experience?
At UTEP, they did offer a research master's and just a non-research master's.
Okay.
And I did the research approach.
Okay. Because you did do research, right, in your master's program, then doing the Pathways program with NASA, was that something that you needed to coordinate with your professor, the one that was like, overseeing your research?
I'm going to say yes. Like, it's definitely something you need to coordinate with your professor on if you are doing research. In my case, since CCETR was a NASA-funded center, the students obtaining a Pathways internship or position was, a highlight to them. They're like, yep, go ahead, you go, do your thing. Because that was in part of the goal of the NASA grant that CCETR, got, because they want more, minority students to be able to have that access to the aerospace industry and to NASA in particular. So that's part of that goal, to continue opening that door and create a pipeline.
Yeah, fantastic. That sounds like a great program and a very robust ecosystem to, find that talent and to feed that talent into the agency. Right.
So I was fortunate for my program, but just because if any of the listeners, you're working at a research center at your university doing research, and you are interested in this program, don't let, just because if it's not NASA funded, don't let that deter you. If it's something you're interested in, definitely talk with your professor about it. And there may be some pushback because they want you to focus on the research, on their research. But I think having that open communication will probably be beneficial, and you'll probably still be able to do this Pathways program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is great advice. Yeah. So now let's, dive deep into the Pathways program, because it's super competitive, I suppose. And there's a very specific way, I think, to apply. So can you share with our audience some tips and tricks you use to apply for this program and be successful at getting the into the program?
Of course. So to even apply for the program, the first step is to create a created profile on USA Jobs. Because again, this is a civil servant position, and all civil servant positions are open through USA Jobs. So this opportunity, I think I mentioned earlier, it doesn't come around too often, maybe once in the fall, once in the spring, so at most twice a year.
Yeah.
So you have to be diligent in checking for it. So something that I did was I set up an alarm, kind of an alert for me, that if there was an announcement that was put out that said, for example, I don't remember the exact words I used, but if it was like NASA Pathways, I would get an email alert telling me like, hey, this opportunity just got posted if you're interested. So that was one of my tricks for applying.
Right.
Another one was because the application or the opportunity only opens up every so often, I had my resume already prepared beforehand. I had it in a separate Word document with everything I needed written out, and all I had to do was copy and paste. Because you have to, it's a resume builder within USA Jobs, and you can't just upload a resume. You have to actually, and that does take time. Want to make sure that everything is filled out accurately. So that's why doing it in Word beforehand, you can make sure that you don't have any grammatical errors, any just mistakes that might be in your resume. It can be easily fixed.
Right.
And then, I had another one that I'm blanking on.
While you think about it, you mentioned that this is so important to be able to find this application or to apply for the job as soon as it opens, because the position will be open until they have reached the target amount of applicants that they have, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. So for example, and I'm not saying that this is the set requirements, just an example.
Right.
If they want at least 40 applicants to apply to this posting, then, and on the first day that it opens, 40 people apply. It'll close at the end of that day.
Yeah.
If they reach the 40 people the next day, then it'll close at the end of that day. So really, just to be safe, if you are interested in the Pathways program, you need to apply the day of and be ready. So I thought of my third tip and trick is actually to be in the know. So people within NASA, in the NASA community, we are alerted of when a Pathways opportunity will be opening up soon. So we're able to let people know, to be vigilant, I'll say.
Yeah.
Because they don't give us the exact date. They'll just say, hey, it's opening within a couple of weeks.
And the other thing I was going to ask is, do you think that the resume that you prepare for a Pathways program, is there any different than for other positions, other regular positions in other companies?
I think the biggest difference is that with the Pathways resume, you can be as thorough as you want. I'm not saying to write a book of yourself, but you can go really in depth and in detail of different projects that you've worked on to really describe your experience. Whereas with other jobs, from my experience at least, they limit you to that one pager.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd say that's the biggest difference, because you're able just to elaborate more of.
Of course. Yeah. And I think that's important. For PhDs, it's usually limited to 2 pages. So we get that extra other side of the page, but it's still, like you're saying, you still have to be very careful about what you write about and how you deliver the message, the impact still. So that's good to know. And so earlier we discussed the fact that you grew up in El Paso, went to university in your hometown, and when you decided to work for NASA, because you got this great opportunity, that meant that you had to move away from home. And I think you were the first one in your family to do so as well. And then on top of that, you are in your job maybe 1 or 2 months, and we are hit with a global pandemic. And at that point, you had moved to Huntsville, Alabama. How was that experience for you? And, how do you cope with it?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, I got to move to Huntsville at least a month prior to the pandemic hitting. So before that, I was really excited about this next chapter in my life.
Yeah.
Changing from a student to now a professional. I was just really excited because I had been to Huntsville before. So I was ready.
Yeah.
Of course, it was tough leaving my family, but at the same time, it's like I'll get to see them like in a month or so. I had already had a trip planned, so I'm like, it's okay. But then once the pandemic hit, that all changed, right? So NASA first started with at least with Marshall, going on a 2-week telework, which has now turned to almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
So starting a new career and moving across the country almost for a new job has been difficult, both emotionally and mentally.
Yeah.
Because I am very family oriented, and having that anxiety and of, will I see my family, or when will I see my family again, and will I get to see my family again? And unfortunately, I did have some family members that I didn't get to see again because of like the virus or other reasons.
Yeah.
But there have been blessings as well throughout the pandemic. Technology has been a huge, huge plus. I think just with being able to keep that communication alive.
Yeah.
Not just teleworking, but one thing that my family did, which I loved, is we actually played a game of loteria.
Oh, yeah.
But I feel like every family in El Paso, or at least every household, has a loteria set.
Mm-hmm.
You're all able to play together, but at our, designated locations. So that made us.
Yeah, that's really cool. Actually, loteria is actually really interesting. I had never heard of it ever until I went to just before the pandemic, actually. So this must have been November of 2019. I went to an event in Houston from this Latinx Hispanic group that they just opened it up. And I just went because I wanted to network, and they played loteria. And I was like, what is this? Is this like bingo? But like it has different things.
It's better than bingo, I think. Of course, an unbiased opinion.
Yeah. But it's cool. It has very cultural components to it.
I have my own loteria set here. It's definitely a huge part of the culture. I feel like we play it at Christmas too, and Thanksgiving, at any gathering, we always play it.
That's awesome. That's really great. You also mentioned that sometimes it became difficult because, your major way of connecting with your family was through technology. And then also that was the major way of working. So I imagine that the Zoom fatigue was very prominent during those times, or maybe during the worst times of the pandemic. Do you have any particular ways that helped you cope with it?
So for me, I definitely got the technology fatigue, as you mentioned. I got blue light glasses as well, just because my eyes are getting strained from looking at the computer all day. Because we're on the computer all day, but then we automatically go to our phone.
Yeah.
Like for some relief, but that's still a screen.
Right.
And then I also went and played my Switch, but that's also a screen.
Right.
So to kind of get away from technology, I actually decided to get out of the house. And one of the few ways I could was running. Yeah. Because I wasn't going to the gyms at the time, just because, I wanted to be safe, as safe as I can be for myself.
Yeah.
So decided to get into running, and by the time I actually decided to train for a half marathon. And crazily enough, I actually completed that.
That's amazing.
Definitely a lot of hard work. My body hated me at the time. But it's a nice accomplishment to have. Another thing is, and she's at my feet right now, is that I got a dog. She's like on my feet, using my foot as a pillow.
Yeah, I've got mine over here as well. He's not a pandemic dog, but he's very, very, very close to me. So he's my work buddy from home.
Probably some of our laziest coworkers, right?
For sure. They're very demanding too.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, you are open on some of your social media channels about growing up, becoming an engineer, and, understanding and believing that you can be an engineer, and you are an engineer. Can you talk a little bit more about how you didn't always feel that self-confidence in, understanding, believing that you can be an engineer, and how you have, tried to work on that?
So at least with engineering, I think the first instance of when my self-confidence may have been challenged and when I've been working to build it up since then is I'll always remember this comment, unfortunately, is when one of the guys in my class, he comes up to me and says, like, look around, there's X number of girls in the class. Let's see if you're here by next semester. And this was told to me like sometime in my freshman year. I think it was the second semester. But it's just unfortunate that some people have that mindset. But in case of that guy, I didn't see him at graduation, so I don't know if he changed majors. But all I know is he wasn't there.
That's right, and you were.
Yep. Heck yes. So yeah. So unfortunately, like I said, that comment always will stay with me, but it also kind of pushes me. Forming study groups with my peers really helped because we really help to build each other up and to build our engineering confidence for each other. If we didn't understand a topic, we would talk about it and get into more detail and figure out, okay, this is where I'm lacking that understanding. And you understand it, so explain it to me a bit more. Because I guess the lecture wasn't enough for me. I need some more. I need to talk about it more. So study groups were a huge thing for me in building that confidence. By the end of undergrad, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do with my degree yet. Because again, it was so versatile. There were so many options, not sure what to do. Never thought of NASA, but that's why I decided to pursue my master's, to continue, to increase my knowledge, experience, skills, and again, that confidence, that engineering confidence in myself. I know what I'm doing. Because at that point in my undergrad, I felt like I had some of the tools, but I needed a bit more for myself. So recently, I did get asked of the advice to my younger self, and my response there was don't doubt yourself, remain confident, and remember you are capable. You are an engineer. And I honestly still tell myself that every day. Building that confidence is a work in progress, and you have to work at it every day. I wish I could say I was the master of confidence. I am not.
Yeah, I was going to say that this person definitely meant to hurt you with the words that person used, right? I had a comment that was not maybe so intentional, but it was still hurtful because I think I was in sophomore year, and at the time I was taking Physics 2, Calc 3, and analytical chemistry. And I was really struggling with analytical chemistry, and physics was like the death of me. If it weren't for the curve, I don't think I would have passed physics, But I was having a hard time. And then my friend, I'm telling her, and both of these friends, they one is from Europe and the other one is from Latin America, lives now in the States, and they are both business majors. They were both business majors, and I was telling them how much I was struggling, and one of them goes, "Oh, Jenny, don't worry about it. Those kind of subjects are just harder for women." And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? And this is the first recollection of a comment like that I have. But fortunately, I was 22. I was like, there's absolutely no scientific base for what you're saying. And so I am not going to believe you. But I just, I think it's so important for people to recognize that we have these thoughts as a society. They may be unconscious. Sometimes they're very conscious and they're very intentional. And we have to be aware of the effect that it has on people.
And I think going off of that, I've heard something similar from almost every female engineer. We've had a similar story of, hearing something similar.
Okay, so now for the fun part. Imagine a friend of yours comes to visit you in your city and wants you to show them around, but unfortunately you're not in town. So you give them the top places or things to do in your city. So this could be in El Paso, where you have tons of experience, or, in Huntsville, Alabama as well. What will you tell them to do?
Okay, I'll actually do both places, and I'll start with El Paso. So with El Paso, those top 3 places would be, it's a majority Hispanic community, so any place you go for Mexican food is going to be great.
Yeah.
Recommend the food. Second place would be the Franklin Mountain State Park. I talked about the El Paso Mountains, so that allows you to actually do some hiking and get into the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Third is going to Scenic Drive, and at night, so that it's like an overlook on the mountain, on the side of the mountain. You can drive up, and then you can see the city at night. So that's El Paso. As for Huntsville, I love coffee.
Yeah.
And Huntsville has been growing a lot recently, and now they offer a great coffee scene. So there's a lot of different places to try around here.
Okay.
Second, I love hiking and running. So there's some great both hiking, running, and biking trails nearby and within the city limits. One of them is the Montesano State Park.
Okay.
For me, it's like 15-minute drive and you're there. So it's a nice little getaway to go hike with Sophie.
Nice.
And then the third one, of course, we're in the Rocket City. Huntsville's a Rocket City.
Yeah.
So you got to visit the Space and Rocket Center.
Marissa, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you, Dr. Flores, for inviting me. This has been great.
Thank you for listening. If you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at LatinxScan. If you have questions or feedback, you can email us at latinxscan@gmail.com. And if you want to support our project, please leave a review. We have made it easy for you and added the links to the show notes. That's it for now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and remember, unidos somos más.